So it's been 40,000 miles since I've owned my 2019 Mustang GT, and I've got this folder full of records on all the maintenance items I've had to do and some of the reliability concerns I've had. So today, we're gonna be breaking down every dollar I've spent on the maintenance on the Mustang. So in the 40,000 miles I've owned this car, it's been about 4 years or so of the ownership since I've owned the car. I absolutely love this car, and I just wanna break down the maintenance costs on this car. If you're in the market for a Mustang GT, you can kind of get an idea how much you're gonna have to spend on the Mustang. I have some reliability concerns with it as well, so I'll go ahead and cover those. But really for the maintenance items, I wanna be able to cover the oil changes, the brakes, the tires, and all of that good stuff. That if you're in the market will be helpful for you, how much it costs to maintain a Mustang GT, and any reliability concern you should really be looking out for. All right, so first off, we're gonna talk about oil changes on this Mustang. I'm not gonna cover the mods in this video. As you can see, the car is modified. I did do a 4-year ownership review as well, where I kind of cover all the mods I've done on the car and how it has been throughout these mods. So this one, I really wanted to focus on how much money I've spent on the maintenance to really get you guys an idea of what it's like to maintain a Mustang GT, and if they're reliable if you're considering a used one right now. The first up on the list is going to be the oil changes, the basic maintenance you have to do for any other car. With this car though, you got to put 10 quarts of synthetic blend oil. Now of course you can save money by not going to the dealership, but the car is under warranty until 5 years, so that's what I chose to do, to take it to the dealership and basically have all the warranty records and in case something goes wrong with the Coyote motor. The first 3 oil changes were actually free. When you buy the car, they give you 4 pass points, so those basically covered the first 3 oil changes. I did have to pay for the 5 remaining oil changes I had to do on the car. So I've had about 8 oil changes done on this car. Now the first 3, they were free, but I also went with whatever Ford recommended, which was the synthetic blend. But since I started paying for the remainder of the 5, I actually went full synthetic just for some peace of mind. Now, as you guessed it, those synthetic oils are a little bit more expensive than synthetic blend, but it's not that much of a difference, and I think it is beneficial if you're gonna keep the car for a long time. So how much did the synthetic oil change cost at the dealership? I have paid about $150 for an oil change, so for 5 oil changes, I've paid about $750. Full synthetic oil change. If you get a synthetic blend, you might save $100 altogether, so it might be $650, $600, somewhere around the ballpark. Or if you have a connection at the dealership, you might be able to get a little bit better deal. But for my oils, for my full synthetic oil change at my dealership, I've paid about $750 for 5 oil changes. Again, I've gotten total 8 oil changes, 3 of them were free, but on average it costs about $150 to do it at the dealership. Of course, you can do it cheaper by doing it by yourself or take it to the Indy mechanic. Now let's talk about brakes as the number 2 item. Believe it or not, it's still on stock brakes. I have not had to change the brakes yet, although it is time for them to be changed. The rotors are starting to get worn off. If it gets too much heat in them, you can kind of feel the steering wheel vibrating. But that's gonna be next on my list, to be changing the brakes. But right now, just to kind of get you an idea, the brakes are pretty much stock from the factory. I haven't changed anything yet. So the brakes have lasted about 40,000 plus miles just fine. If I were getting one, I would not be worried about, getting a car and having to replace the brakes right away. So as long as the brakes are okay, you should be able to squeeze a good bit of miles out of them. Of course, it depends on your driving style too. I do drive this car, but I've also taken road trips where there's minimal wear on the brakes. So your mileage may vary, but for my purposes, 40,000 plus miles, still on original brakes, but they are due for replacement. I've been doing some research. You could probably get the rotors and pads for around $250 or $300, depending on which one you want to go with, and about a couple $100 in labor, or you can do it yourself. So I would say $400 to $500 for brake change, and that is going to be next on my list that I'm going to be tackling on my personal car. But I would save about that much money for the brakes themselves. Now, if you've been paying attention to the car, you do know it does not have the stock replacement tires. So next up, let's talk about tires on my Mustang. So this is going to be a little bit different because I actually ended up upgrading the tires, so that may not be the case for you. As you can see, the car is lowered. I have 285, 35, 19 square setup, so they're much wider than what you get on your stock Mustang. If it's a performance pack, they're about the same, 275s, but if you get base Mustang, you get 235 tires, and the one I had was actually black accent package, which is 255. Wider tires really make a difference in terms of how the car looks. It sits much better, but But to keep things fair, I'm gonna actually give you the replacement cost for stock OEM tires so you really get an idea, and you really get an idea how much they lasted. So I did not upgrade them until the tires were due for an upgrade. So my Mustang lasted about 35,000 miles when you could kind of start seeing the tread was going a little bit lower. I didn't measure it, but if I was to gun it, you could have some traction issues. So for stock Mustang, I would say your tires, again, depending on your driving style, the tires could last you about 30 to 40,000 miles depending on how you drive. So I personally, like around 35,000 is when or 33,000 is when I actually changed the tires. So I upgraded to Michelin, but if I was to opt for the stock OEM replacement with the Pirellis, although I have to say these Michelin Pilot Sport all-season tires, they are really good. If you can afford to upgrade to this, I would highly recommend it because they hook really good for an all-season tire, and of course you can drive them in the rain or snowy conditions, so that's a big plus for these tires. But let's say you want to get Pirelli OEM replacements for 255 with tires, you're probably gonna get around $250 per tire. So you're gonna have to do 4 obviously, so about $1,000 and paying someone and then having the alignment done. It's about $1,200 or so. What I've personally spent, I've got the Michelin Pilot Sport 285 tires. They were about, I wanna say $350 per tire. So $1,400 for the tires, and of course I replaced the rims too. Again, that's completely separate, but if you want to get these tires in this width, it would be about $350 per tire, and then figure out the installation and the alignment. If it was me, I would get Michelin, especially if you're getting a little bit smaller size, like 255s. Yeah, it's gonna be a little bit cheaper than $350 that I paid, but it is well worth the investment because you can actually enjoy the car and get on it without having to worry about the traction. Now, if you've been keeping tabs, then I've got the oil change done, which was about $750 or so. All tires cost me about $1,400, but yours may be a little bit cheaper because I actually decided to upgrade my tires. And brakes are due for an upgrade, but I haven't spent the money yet. But if you want to include that, it would be around $500 or so. So all in all, about $2,000 or so in maintenance that I've spent on the Mustang for almost over 4 years that I've owned it, which in my opinion is not a bad cost compared to what you're getting, a 460 horsepower, naturally aspirated V8 with tons of power and really enjoyable car to drive. And while the reliability concerns with the 10-speed transmission was covered under warranty, I still want to bring that up because if you are buying a used one, you want to make sure your 10-speed transmission is operating the way it should be. All right, so next let's talk about the reliability concerns with the 10-speed transmission. I've had to take it to a dealer twice to get some work done on the 10-speed transmission. So let's talk about it, what the issues were, and how they were able to fix it. 10-speed is like one of those things on this car that is really good, but also can be very quirky. It's like one of the best parts of the car, but also can be a little bit worse part of the car. For my 10-speed transmission, around 5,000 miles or so, I noticed very harsh jerking. So if I was on the highway and specifically in 10th gear, and if I downshifted to 6th or below, it would result in an extremely violent jerk. The car would shake, and it wasn't like once in a while, it would happen pretty much without fail every time. So I kept it as is, I kept driving, and I was like, okay, I bought a new car, this shouldn't be happening. So I called the dealer and I asked them for, resolution to that. So they said to drop the car, they'll take a look at it. They were able to update the transmission software, and then it was fine. So luckily no hardware issues, but still was annoying to have the software issue on the Mustang with the 10-speed transmission. So mine was under warranty. I didn't pay anything out of pocket for that, but the dealer said the diagnostic and updating the software could be upwards of $300 to $500 depending on what the issue is. So I would recommend, if your Mustang does not have the warranty, like if you're looking for a used one, make sure the 10-speed transmission is working the way it's supposed to be. Then for another 15,000 to 20,000 miles, everything was going great. The 10-speed transmission was working as intended. But of course, not everything is perfect, and I had some other 10-speed transmission issues. So then it started doing this thing where if you were in sport mode, specifically sport mode, and you put it into sport mode, driving around, the shift to the 3rd and the 5th gear was extremely violent. It would shake the entire car. I do have a video on this channel as well where I covered that, and the shake was really bad, almost to a point where it wasn't fun driving it. And the funny part is, like, if you floored it, the shifts were fine. The upshifting to 3rd and 5th was completely fine. It's only if it was partial throttle, it would shake the entire car. Again, I took it back to the dealer, asked them what the issue was. I dropped off the car, and again, it ended up being a software update. So once they updated the software, the car's been running fine since then. So I didn't have to spend anything, obviously, because it's covered under warranty, but it was just annoying dealing with it and having to drop off the car, not having the car for a couple days, and for them to update the software. So I would say if you're looking for a used Mustang, definitely look for the 10-speed transmission. Really put it into the gears, paddle shift it, really get a feel for it, because that's the last thing you want to get, where you get the 10-speed transmission Mustang GT and it develops issue, because then you're going to be paying for diagnostic. If it's not under warranty, you're going to be paying for software updates. So that's one less thing you should be worrying about, and you should be able to get it. You should be able to pinpoint as you're driving if there's any 10-speed transmission issues or not. But yeah, so that's the main thing I've had to deal with. Into reliability, everything else has been fine. I would occasionally get the engine tick after the oil change, but honestly, it goes away after 500 miles or so, and even Ford said there's nothing they can do about it. So I've decided not to really include it in this video. The reliability, the main thing has been transmission. Mine has been under warranty, so luckily it was covered. Yours may not be, so I definitely recommend making sure that the car you're buying, or if it's coming out of warranty and you have some issues, get the software update before you have to pay for it. As for the maintenance, it's been pretty much normal routine maintenance, nothing unusual. Tires, brakes, oil change, nothing that would cost a lot more than a typical car would. Of course, if you decide to get some meteor tires like I have, then you're gonna pay a little bit more. And that's one mod I absolutely recommend that you should do, because it's really gonna make your car very fun to drive. Like if you include the brakes and the oil change, you're gonna pay about $1,000 to $1,200 depending on what route you go with. But overall, the car has been extremely reliable for me. In terms of maintenance, it hasn't cost me a pretty penny to maintain this car. That's one of the things I love about the Mustangs, that they're pretty reliable and they don't cost a lot more to maintain than it would be like for a BMW M3 or M4 or something like that, like any of the German cars that would have similar output numbers to this car. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's 40,000 mile review on my 2019 Mustang GT. Should be helpful if you're in the market for buying a new Mustang, or you've had your Mustang for a little bit of time and you're considering if it's on its last leg, should you upgrade or should you keep it? It's been pretty reliable. Maintenance isn't too bad, especially if you're buying a new one. Especially if you're buying a used one, it would be no different than any car of this caliber. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure you smash that like button, and of course subscribe to Red 50 for more videos.